Hi students, I wanted to show you today how I would execute making a slab tray from a simple form. And what I have here is a slab of clay that I threw out using no roller. It is basically 13.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And I want your trays to be relatively small, but I want them to be decorated and decorative and have decorative elements to them, like handles, feet, and flourishes. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that in my studio with things I have at home. The first thing that I have is just a plastic serving tray. I buy these all the time from the 99-cent store. Some of you might have them in your home. I just look for forms that will take a slab, laying in them really nicely, and give me a shape that I like. I'm going to take this form and I'm going to cover it in just a layer of plastic. That way I can lift my slab out of it later. So I'm going to lift up my slab. I'm going to set this down, the form that's covered in plastic down, and I'm going to gently lay my slab inside and tuck in the plastic like I'm making the bed, tucking in the sheets. And now I'm going to press the clay into the form. Sometimes I'll drop it a little bit. You can see it moved my camera. So it sinks into the slab form and I could get it exactly how I want it. Now, since I want you to make smaller ones, I have more clay here than I need. So I'm going to trim away the outside exterior of this rough slab. And I'm eyeballing this shape here. To create a uniform oval that I can then turn into a tray. I'm cutting away extra pieces that don't mesh up with the design. And then right here, I have a room key that I cut into this shape that's a rib shape. You could just take an old room key, draw it out with a Sharpie, and cut it out with a pair of scissors. So you have a really nice curved shape that'll work really well for you to compress the surface and get into the corners of your slab so it's nicely compressed and rounded. Now that I have this in the shape that I want it, I'm going to take my sponge and compress and smooth even further. I'm going to cut a little extra from here so it's uniform and even all the way around. But remember, these don't have to be perfect because they're handmade. And I'm going to round this and soften this. Now at this point, my slab tray is really wet, it's really floppy, but it's in a nice oval shape like what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go set this out in the sun and let it dry. So overnight, I let the slab tray set up and it's ready for me to pull it out of the mold and decorate. Before I do that, I'm going to make the flourishes that I'm going to attach to the tray to make it interesting and to add detail to it. So the first thing that I'm going to do is roll out a nice coil of clay that I will use to edge the border of the tray. So I've got my lump of clay here, and I'm squeezing it into the rough coil shape. And now I'm gonna roll this coil into a long, thin rope. And I'm looking to get this about the thickness of one of my fingers. And I'll have to do this a couple times. And once I get this to the thickness that I want, I'm going to add detail to it to make this coil interesting. So I have my wooden rib. This came in your toolkit. I'm going to roll the coil forward. And I use the back side of my wooden tool to press into the clay and create a rope pattern, which I really love, and I use this a lot in my own work. I get all the edges, all the details, and I add a lot to this. I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to roll out a second coil. Take your time and make sure that it's even with the first one, an even thickness. And then I'm going to detail this one as well. I'm not pressing hard, I'm pressing lightly. And I'm putting these details in all over the coil, wherever I think it looks a little blank, until I have a second rope coil. I'm going to set these aside, and now I'm going to grab my tray. So here's the tray that I made yesterday, and it's stiffened up enough for me to be able to take it out of the plastic. And you can see that it's not floppy, that it's leather hard now. And you also might be able to see that the edges are really sharp, so I'm gonna have to come back in and smooth all these edges out. But I'm gonna put the first detail on this tray. And the way that I do that is I'm gonna carefully flip this over. Sponge and smooth out the bottom. And I'm careful to wipe out all the creases from the plastic, but I'm not going to worry about the edge yet. Okay, this looks nice and smooth. Now I'm going to take my serrated rib, the rib with the little teeth on it, and I'm going to score very deeply with a lot of shadows the edge of the tray, just like this. Now I'm going to take my brush, I have this old brush at home, and the joining slip that I made from one of our previous videos, and I'm going to apply a thick layer of this slurry to the part that I scored. This is only going to work if you score your piece really deeply. I'm not going to worry too much about scoring my coils because they're really soft. I'm going to take my first coil, bring it around, and press it down firmly, wiggling and jiggling the foot ring onto the tray. This is what we're making, a foot ring out of clay. You can see here I have a section missing, so I'll take my needle tool, I'll cut away one end, just like we did with our coil pots. I'll cut away the other end at an angle, score those edges, take my second coil, lay it in there, and attach it to the first coil. Wiggle, jiggle, work this piece of clay and really stick it down. You want to see the slip squish out the sides. Now, before I flip this tray over, I have my coils firmly attached. I'm going to take my sponge and I'm going to clean up and seal down the coil around the inside and the outside. I'm really pressing this, and I'm going to use my wooden tool. It looks a little different than the one that you had in your toolkit, but this will work just as well, and so will the tool in your toolkit. And I'm going to make sure that my coil is sealed really nicely to my tray. Going around again. Now, before I can flip this over, I have to let this coil set up a little bit. Otherwise, the weight will squish down when I flip this over to add another coil on the inside of the dish. So I'm going to wait a little while until this sets up. To keep this from drying out while this clay acclimates to this clay's consistency, I'll set this back in my form. I'll carefully lift it. Set it back in my tray and nestle it in plastic a little bit while I leave the foot ring exposed. And then this will go back out into the sun for about 20 minutes, a half an hour, and then I'll be able to flip this over and design the surface. Okay, we're back with our tray that's been out in the sun for 20 minutes. And here, my foot ring is firmed up enough that I can now take my tray and flip it over and set it down on the table in front of me. Now, I want you all to take your serrated rib and score the edge of your tray. And I did this already, but I'm just reinforcing the scoring. So that way your tray is scored deeply using your tool. And here I have another prepared rope coil ready to go of soft clay. And I'm gonna ring my tray with this coil so it references the rope coil that I placed on the underside of my tray. Using my joining slip, I'm going to tap down a nice thick slurry of joining slip. That will help attach my coil to the rim of this tray. I am not going to worry too much about scoring the coil because the coil of clay is so soft and I scored really well the surface of the tray. But before I push this coil into place, I want to make sure that I placed it correctly. Now I'm going to bring my rope around. I am going to score here. And join those two ends together. Now I place my coil on the tray, and once again I'm pressing it, wiggling, jiggling, and really attaching the coil to the rim of the tray to give it a nice border. Now I'm going to come back in with my damp sponge, clean up the extra slip, and smooth out any extra score marks that are left behind. Come back around the edge and smooth that out. Now my edge here has a little bit of a burr on it from when I cut it earlier with the needle. If you have this, you can just run your fingers around and smooth this down, or you can come in with the loop tool that was in your toolkit. This is a cutting tool, a ribbon tool, and we use this tool to shave off extra clay. So I'm spending a little bit of time bringing this edge back, trimming away the burr, and smoothing out my tray. Once again, I'm going to come back through with my wooden stick and run it along the seam of the tray to help with sealing down the rope coil. Now, we have a really beautiful little tray here. You can see that the size would be really nice for serving. You could serve muffins, you could serve sliced vegetables, you can serve any number of things on this tray. And to enhance it even further, I can take my little scraps from my coil roll these into a small coil like that, a little bit longer than my finger. Grab a little more clay. And I can roll these into thinner, longer coils. That I then will attach together just by gently pinching them, and then I can twist them. Now, this is only going to work with coils that are really nice and soft. If you're using clay that's a little bit stiffer, go ahead and add some water to it and put it back in your bag and let it get soft before you attempt this. Now I've got this really cool long rope coil that I'm going to cut in half. So I have two sides, and I'm going to pinch this cut side so it mimics the loose end of this one. I'm going to bend this and squeeze the ends together so that this is now in an oval shape like that. And then I can place this here on my tray. Make sure that I position it correctly so it's directly on the farthest point of the tray. Score it really well. Press it down so it's attached. And then you have a handle. I'm going to do this on the other side. Score. Press this in so it attaches to the other coil. And now I have a tray with two decorative handles. If I don't like how these two ends are attaching, I can take a little ball of clay, like a button, score at the very base of the handle attachment, score one side of my button, moisten this just a little bit with my sponge, and then I will press in this button and camouflage that attachment. Do this on the other side as well. Okay, students, here's a beautiful molded tray that I made at home using a simple plastic form that I had in my kitchen. And I hope you enjoyed this video.